how's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Yellow Pages Bookcast. We're your hosts. This is Jason.
This is Steven. And this is the podcast where we read Asian American fiction. And hopefully we'll expand the nonfiction. Not sure yet, but we will be doing a short review. There will be spoilers, and we will have some character breakdowns and overall themes. This particular book, we're not going to do cast choice, but we'll mention why later. Okay.
Yep. So this book we're going to be reviewing this session is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, which is part of the overarching series called the Dandelion Dynasty. So, Steven, do you want to get into why you chose this book?
Okay, well, number one, I think you kind of referred it to me in the first place.
Yeah.
I had been listening to this podcast by LeVar Burton where he reads short story fiction, and Ken Liu wrote one of my favorite ones. I don't remember what it's called, but I'll bring it up next time. And later on, I was talking to you, Jason, and you mentioned he had this epic, this series, and it's called like the Dandelion. What is it called? The Dandelion series, I believe.
Yeah, Dandelion Dynasty.
Dandelion
That's
Dynasty.
the name of the that's the name of the series. But this one is Grace of Kings, which kind of got me mixed up. I thought Grace of Kings was, the whole trilogy or whatever, quadrology, but I was wrong.
Well, I mean that's fine, but like mainly it was kind of like us talking about it, and I pretty much have never read fantasy fiction that much, and the last book by Fonda Lee, that was kind of fantasy a little bit, but not really because it was in the form of a gangster book. This one, on the other hand, was he's creating a world, he's creating dynasties, he's creating war. So yeah, that was pretty much why I wanted to go with this one. But Jason, why don't you give us a quick non-spoiler overview of this book?
Wow, that's a hard task because there's a lot that's covered in this book. So I'll do my best to put it in a nutshell. So this book is basically centering around two main characters as they struggle in this vast world of revolution, empires falling, new states rising out of the ashes, and a clash of ideals between our two main characters. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of spoilery, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
So like the way this book is written, I think when I first read it, and before, this is my second time reading it actually, the way this book is written is very different from your typical fantasy epic, in that it kind of reminds me of like an old historian just telling me the story, or basically reading one man's account of what happened in the past.
And I think we kind of talked about it too. It has some parallels with past, kind of like Homer-esque, maybe like a little bit of the Iliad, some other classical fiction.
Romance of the Three Kingdoms is another one. Yeah, and then so basically, I noted that this is basically a very macro lens into the world, where in the case of the characters, you're not really drip fed information about them. You're basically almost upfront told what their motivations are, with a rare exception of a few, which might be kind of jarring to some who are more used to like the normal, like Lord of the Rings, what have you, like more conventional fantasy. So that definitely took me a little getting used to for me.
Mm-hmm.
Steven.
I completely agree in a sense, but really quick, can you kind of break down your history of just like reading fantasy in general? Like, let's take out Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and you mentioned Lord of the Rings. Have you like read those, and what other fantasy epics have you read?
Right. So I read the Lord of the Rings long time ago.
Okay.
Probably before. So this is like when I was much younger, and I didn't really have much patience. So I'm pretty sure I just skimmed it.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it doesn't really count.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
but I pretty much grew up reading stuff like Forgotten Realms, which is your classic like Dungeons and Dragons adventures. That
Mhm.
was very much like got like your all of your classic stereotypes, like your fighters, knights in shining armor, magicians,
Right.
slinging fireballs and stuff. So, and then what else? Yeah, some sci-fi as well, but
Mhm.
mostly those are mostly like Western focused, like in a Western setting
Right.
with more Western characters and sentiments, and I guess Western style of storytelling.
Okay, now that you bring that up, okay, why don't we go ahead and move forward, and then we'll go back to the question that I have for you, which is basically what's the difference, Western versus Eastern style. We'll get to that, but normally what we do next is, we just kind of go over our personal rating, non spoilery. So why don't we go into that, and then we'll talk about the spoilers and what we enjoyed about the book, and then I really want to get your insight between the East versus the West, because I normally, I keep reiterating this. I normally don't read fiction or science fiction or fantasy. So I think it would be really interesting to get your take on that. But if you could give a star rating of dandelion leaves, how many dandelion leaves would this? Actually, dandelions, do they have leaves?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay. Or petals. Petals. Let's go with petals. Out of
All right.
5 petals, how many would you give this particular book and why?
I would probably give it 3.5.
Oh, okay. All right. Now let's get into the why.
Yeah. So as I hinted at before, the characters and the way they're written, it's works for this style of storytelling. But personally, it doesn't really have that like super relatable element in there.
Hmm.
You don't really get into their thoughts. Like this is a third person omniscient point of view. So you're losing out on some of that intimacy. Like you don't really connect with the characters as closely as I would like. So that's kind of the reason why. Another reason why was like the central conflict between our characters I felt was a little rushed.
Mm,
And so like the ending was great, but I felt like it could have been more so if it had like built it up more and earned it, you know?
right. But then it wouldn't just be 3 book or 4 books, right?
Yeah. So yeah, like these are all, these are all very subjective. Like I know like Ken Liu was trying for something, and there's certain limitations, which
Hmm.
we'll go more in depth in the spoilers.
For me, I was actually hovering between 3 and a 3.5. So I guess I would settle around 3.5 as well, because number one, I thought the action was so well done. A lot of the character motivations, I agree with you. They're muddled. I didn't, and personally, I don't agree with a lot of them. And then as we get into the spoilery aspects of the entire story, there I had some complaints that I would text Jason every time I read something, because I felt like there's definitely parallels to what's going on now than there is, and there's also parallels with classical Chinese fiction and classical Chinese history in general. So I definitely thought I thought one of the main characters was really cool. The other one I enjoyed up to a point, and then it kind of tapered off. But I did think a lot of the side characters are really cool. And let me remind everyone, this book is about 600 and so pages. It is a long read. So be ready for that. But I did mention during the Jade trilogy that we read, that the like the chapters, they kind of mention what the chapter is going to be about in a couple phrases, and I always think that that's helpful. Other than that, yeah, I did enjoy the read. I can definitely see this as like a freaking TV series. People equate it to Game of the Thrones, which I've never seen or read. Yeah, I think, I don't know, Jason, what do you think about moving on to like spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it. So, if you haven't checked out Ken Liu's Grace of Kings and the Dandelion Dynasty, check it out. If you're a fan of epics, this is definitely up your alley. If you're a fan of something different, also something way up your alley. So yeah, let's move into spoilers.
All right. So, Jason, I'm going to start off asking you a quick question. What was your favorite part of this book?
So there were a few parts that stuck out to me. I would have to say it's the whale writing. That was a
Oh,
cool.
same.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of imagination in this.
Mhm.
So, Steven, you're right that this is I would classify this as a fantasy epic, but this is like still not nowhere near like fantasy with like magic and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But there's certain aspects in here that's I think elevated to that at some points. And
Mm.
the whales, which are called Krubins, I believe,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
Grace of Kings, like they're pretty cool. So basically, they're like a race of whale like animals with horns, and they're supposedly super intelligent, and they have
Mhm.
like their own society. It doesn't really explain all this, but
Right.
like this is like part of the mythology in this world. So I
Right.
thought that was really cool. And then basically, the main character Kunigaru, is that how you pronounce
Yeah,
his
that's how
name?
I got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, he basically makes friends with the Pacific Islander people,
Yeah.
and they basically, and that was actually another cool scene. Like they're testing him
Mhm.
because they're like this really isolated society. They're
Mhm.
seeing like, okay, you want to be emperor. What makes you so special? Like, what's gonna? Because the old one like said the same thing that you're saying. Like, what's gonna set you apart?
Right.
I forget like what exactly he says, but he basically passes their test,
Well,
and then they take
basically,
him.
oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
oh,
I
I
was going
remember
to
now.
say basically he's more humble about it, right? He basically says, "Well, I can't promise you that we won't come to your country, but I can promise you that, you know, if I became king, I would allow there to be a mutual respect between cultures and, we're not going to actively try to take over your territory, but that doesn't mean we won't visit. And that doesn't mean your people can't visit our world because you have to leave that up to your people. So it was kind of like
Yeah,
the gray area that he was going
yeah,
into.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember now. Like one of the lines that stuck out to me was where Cooney was like, I can't prevent your young ones from leaving and exploring the outside world, but in order for them to treasure what you have here, they have to see like what else is out there. And
Exactly.
I'm like, yeah, that kind of does make sense.
Yeah,
So
and
basically, yeah, go
oh no,
ahead.
I was gonna say that kind of brings it into like the Jade City territory because if we look back at Jade City, that was a huge aspect in that book too.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
so I think this is gonna lead to my question to you earlier about East versus West, right? Because as Asian Americans, we kind of have this idea that what culture are we really a part of, and I kind of see that in this exchange that you're talking about right now.
Yeah. So are we going to talk about the difference in writing or storytelling?
Oh no, no, no! You keep going with. Sorry, you just keep going with what you're saying because I completely agree so far. Yeah, like your
Okay, yeah,
favorite part.
yeah. So basically, Cooney launches a sneak attack from like basically within the imperial capital, right?
Yeah,
And he just takes over the imperial palace, and that was a pretty insane scene because you go in and they like kill all the guards and they just see what this old emperor's been up to all these years.
yeah,
And it's basically like all this treasure, like it's crazy.
yeah. And then and then they go to get the new emperor, right? Because he's like a kid, and he just
Yeah,
pisses his pants. And
yeah,
they make it a whole paragraph where it's about like everything is silent, and then you hear dripping. So
yeah,
he gets a whole section of him pissing his pants.
yep,
Um, but yeah, I completely agree because the way they describe the whale or the Kruben as well, they say that they have like the scales, right?
right,
and those scales are like metallic. Okay, so my favorite part is that part, but then there's a secondary part that I really like too when they actually create their own man-made Kruben.
Yeah, the submarines.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and that's like another interesting point about this series is, I mentioned there's not magic in here, but
Mhm.
that's substituted with ingenious engineering, like
Mhm.
Da Vinci level engineering and strategy. That is
Yeah.
the magic we see here. Like another scene that comes to mind is the first time Mata Zindu and Kunigaru their forces clash
Hmm.
is basically like they basically had paratroopers, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool too.
Wait,
Remember
I,
that scene?
I I don't remember.
So
Yeah.
basically, Mata's like, okay, everyone, follow me in a battle,
Uh-huh.
and Cooney thinks his former friend is really straightforward, and he's like, basically, he's riding towards Cooney where Cooney's forces are,
Okay.
but they're all like dummies, right? Remember that?
Oh, yes, that scene.
Yeah, that's something you would have expected Cooney to do,
Yeah.
right? But it's actually, yeah. So I thought that was like a pretty cool turn of events, and it gives us something unexpected.
Right. It's almost as if they learned from each other in that particular sense, right?
Right? Yeah.
Another man, another cool scene. Oh man, I just had it in my head. Let's come back to it. But pretty much I really okay, let's move on to like our favorite character and then if I can remember the scene, we'll go back. But like I definitely think although Kunigaru is kind of like the main protagonist, he kind of annoyed me in the first part of the book. Like I couldn't
Why?
really
Why is
handle
that?
him.
Why?
Well, he's kind of like he's kind of like a jokester, kind of like he just gets lucky a lot.
Oh, does he remind you of someone you know very well?
I don't I well I'd have to ask you that question, but well I don't know. Does he remind you of someone?
Hey, I didn't say who.
But
No, I mean, I think we all know someone who's like that, like someone who doesn't really try but always seems to have good fortune. Really, really like smooth talker. People just like him, like in social situations, you just see that person. They're like, man, like they just got it like dialed in, you know?
right, right. But I think closer and closer to the middle of the book, he really grows as a character. He matures. And then but he's not my favorite character. My favorite character was like Mata. Like I thought Mata was just like up till a point Mata was my favorite character and then they kind of swap. It's so weird.
Yeah, I bet I know which moment what that was. Was
Uh,
it
yeah.
was it when he was giving out the territories to people?
Yeah, Mata became an idiot cuz he
Yeah,
he doesn't really know how to be political. He only rewards people that benefited his war, right? That
yeah,
helped him achieve his goals. Even though those people might not have been great at their job, they just followed him pretty much.
yeah.
So
But like devil's
yeah.
advocate, he was very young. Wasn't he like still a teenager at the start of the book?
Who?
So by Mata.
Yes.
So like by the time he's in that position, he's like barely into his 20s, right?
I agree. And the other problem is Mata grew up in a royal like he grew up being kind of brainwashed. Not brainwashed, but taught by his uncle explaining how famous his family is, right? Explaining
Yep.
how big of warriors his family is and how that needs to continue down the line, right? So I think
Yep.
that kind of affected the way he thinks as well, you know?
I would say he was brainwashed.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like one theme in the book between these two characters,
Yeah.
you've probably picked it up too. It's basically Mata represents the past
Yes.
and Kuni represents the future, right?
Right.
So
Agreed.
this whole book is centered around the clash between that. Like, Mata's into those classical ideals of being a hero, valor on the battlefield. There's
Yeah.
no the only way to win is like through honor and death, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
Ikuni is like the opposite. He's flexible, innovative. He takes on like cripples, beggars into his army.
yeah.
He basically does everything like Mata would not even think about doing.
Right. And so I think that they're really good foils, you know?
Hmm.
But like I said, both of them, if they were combined into one character, that would be like the ultimate king. You know what I mean? If they could just come together and continue to be friends. But the problem is Mata has too much pride, and and it's kind of the same with Kuni. They just can't they can't see past what they see. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was I mentioned this as like one of my weak points of this book was I enjoyed the parts where the two characters were actually together and
Yeah.
bonding, but
Yeah.
it just didn't feel like it was enough time. Like for
Yeah.
the majority of the book, they were apart.
Yeah.
And so like by the time the ending comes during that confrontation, man, like that would have been way like a way bigger punch to the gut if that bond had been explored more, which is like you know why they couldn't have done it. It's just way too much material.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
like it's still something that I'm like, man, if they had only explored this a little bit more, then yeah, it would have just been a lot better for me.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I could see Ken Liu just having like another book, right? Where it's just Kuni and Mata and just the lost period, you know? Because if you think about it, this book is broken up to small subsections, right? I don't remember all of them. But pretty much establishing their two characters, it's pretty much just 2 out of 6 or something, or 1 out of 5. It was one or the other. So you're absolutely right. There's not that much time. And pretty much Mata kind of looks up to Kuni the whole time. Like, wow, this guy knows how to have fun and he knows how to be good with everyone, but he's not a good fighter, but he knows how to hold drink and he knows how to have fun, right? So
Yeah.
each guy like finds something that they love about each other, and that's kind of how they grew to be really good friends. But at one point, they end up calling each other brother, and I agree with you. That's the point where I wish they explored it a little more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But actually, we talked about this. My favorite characters are at the very end of the book and near the middle. So there's this one guy. Jason, how do you say his name?
Beats me, but I just call him Zia.
Okay, Lon
Lon.
Zia. He so his character is kind of like the mastermind, the master strategist. And then there's a female general named Jin Mazada, and they go into her origin story. And I thought, dude, she's so cool, and she's so freaking. She's a female leader, which already in this world, it's kind of like old Asian culture where they look down on women in the sense that, oh no, you should just be a homemaker or you should just take care of the kids and stuff or whatever. And Kunigaru elevates her into being his, master of the army without even really knowing her.
Do you think that's a negative character trait though? Because I don't know, that's just kind of dumb to me. Not in this case because it worked out perfectly for him. But
Wait,
do you think he's just got lucky?
in
Kuni?
what sense?
Like, I mean, if I were him, I would probably not have done it that quickly
Oh, you mean
because he made her like general without seeing
testing
anything,
her?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
without
not even
testing
a
her.
little test. I'm like, I mean, we all know people who talk the talk, but they don't really do much else, right? But
Right.
anyways, I do agree with you. Like, she was a great character. I
Yeah.
kind of wish, even though like her presence was hinted at earlier in the book,
Uh huh.
right? Because one of I think was it Rin Coda or Kogo, who's
Uh-huh.
telling Kuni like, "Hey, oh, no, 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 yeah, oh, I remember now. She was on Mata's army first,
Okay.
remember?
Yeah,
And
I think
then
so.
Mata's second in command was like, "Hey, we've got this person who wants to talk to you. They know a way of how to like win this battle." And Mata's like, "This is trickery. Like, I'll hear none of it," and basically it brushes her off. So like
Oh,
we
yeah.
catch glimpses of her presence like earlier in the book, like I would say around halfway.
Uh-huh.
But we're only reintroduced to her in depth, like pretty much at the end of the book. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I kind of wish she had more screen time or book time, whatever you call it,
Right.
because she's only in like the last like what 100 pages of the book.
Yeah, she comes in on the last like battle pretty much.
Yeah, but
And
I keep
yeah.
forgetting there are more books, so that's probably not as big of a con as I'm making it out to be. But yeah, I definitely would have liked more to see more of her.
Yeah. But like I think the thing is she just catches you really quickly, especially her origin and the full circle of her character at the very end when she goes back. Cuz basically she was a street urchin. She was an orphan, right?
Yep.
And she's like she's a character that got really lucky. Like she was an orphan and then a group of people took her in and they thought she was too much to handle, so they gave her to some so they let her go. And then this granny started feeding her randomly, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, like this street gang took her into their ranks and they taught her how to steal. And then basically one day they find like a group of orphan kids and the street gang take them in. But one night she wakes up and they're like cutting off those orphan kids' limbs. You remember this?
Yeah, I remember it, which is uncomfortably what they
Dude.
supposedly do in the real world.
Yeah, and I've heard it all over
Yeah,
because
everywhere basically.
yeah, like people will sympathize more if you're missing a limb, pretty much, and they'll give you more money, kind of. So at the end, at the end of the book, you know, she goes back, she finds a lot of these people, and she gives them their just privileges or consequences, right?
Yep.
So she goes back to like the couple that took her in and she gives them money. She goes back to the granny who fed her and she gives her money. And then she goes back to this gang and she decimates. Like, right? She
But
kills them.
yeah, yeah. But remember the guy who challenges her and
Oh,
humiliates. She
yeah.
actually spares him because she's like, without you, I would have never learned like this valuable lesson. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like that's how you can tell she's come full circle and matured from and come really far from where she started, right?
Right, right. So she definitely learned something.
Yeah.
And that's what I like in her character, and especially with Lon, because Lon is very interesting too. Lon is the master strategist, and he's at the
Yeah.
very beginning of the book till the very end of the book, right? He's throughout.
Yeah. He's actually he was so in the beginning, he's the
Yeah,
big white bird, right?
yeah, he's the
Which is,
so-called
uh,
assassin.
yeah, it was just like a very memorable opening scene,
Yeah,
which hammers in the point of engineering because this guy basically built himself a flying machine from scratch,
yeah,
like all by himself. And he like was so close to assassinating the emperor.
mm,
And that's like your first introduction to him, but you don't really know it's him until like what like
halfway.
two like a third or a halfway into the book.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it kind of gives you his origin story, and it's really cool. Oh, I remember one of my favorite parts. Okay, Jason, one of my favorite parts is Mata versus was his name Mora?
Who?
You remember
Oh, yeah, the other
the other
swordsman guy.
general? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that. Yep.
and they just go at it. Like it's just a really cool like fight scene. And then he Mata is finally like, oh, I met someone who can match me physically as a warrior, you know. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, okay, I see what this guy is all about. And then I just really enjoy like the moments when Mata is actually just being vulnerable and sees sees an equal. And even when Mata's with his girl Mira, right,
Yeah.
where he's vulnerable and he realizes what his problem is and who he could be. I always found that really interesting with this character. Whereas with Cooney, I didn't really feel as much sympathy for him in turn. I don't know why, but like, yeah,
I mean, Mata has a really tragic backstory, and Cooney doesn't really have that much tragedy befall upon him. Like, sure, bad stuff happens to him, but not on the level of Mata, I think. So I think that's why, like, Cooney, I mean, it's unfair for us to say Cooney hasn't been tested because
yeah,
he has a lot of challenges in the book, but I don't know. Cooney he's just lucky. Like, he just,
yeah,
stuff seems to go his way. And that's why it was really memorable. Remember when he took over the palace?
hmm,
Like, up until that point, like, you knew, like, he didn't really have a lot of character flaws. I
yeah,
mean, sure, he's not a great fighter, but like everything else,
yeah,
he can like get anyone to follow him. He can like persuade anyone. But
right,
here we see him like basically fall victim to like all the temptations of the palace. He
right,
basically like he's like forgets his mission, right?
yeah.
He sleeps with one of the gods, which I thought was hilarious.
Oh,
He didn't.
we should
Oh yeah,
mention, yeah,
yeah. So another big part of this book is I did a little bit of research. It's called the Greek chorus, which is basically exactly what we see here. We see the pantheon of gods in this world.
hmm,
They basically are looking down on the world and down at our characters, and they're commenting and basically manipulating
yeah,
certain parts of the world to like benefit like their favored champions, as they
yeah.
call it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I mentioned at the beginning. It reminds me a little bit of the Iliad, right?
Yeah,
Where you do,
exactly.
yeah, where you do have participation from gods, and then like I was mentioning earlier, Luan Zia, my one of my favorite characters. He's very much like Zhuge Liang in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, in that he's like a master strategist and he's looking for the wind patterns and stuff like that. I don't know. I did really enjoy this book, but like at the same time, I kind of mentioned to you that I felt like I did feel like it was very political in a sense, it, in modern times, right?
Yeah, of
Kunigaru
course.
kind of reminds me of, and I don't know if you think so too, but it's kind of like the rise of Mao Zedong. Like,
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, you can definitely interpret it like that.
yeah, and it's this guy, and throughout the book, he's getting norm like normal people, not just warriors, to fight for him, right? So it kind of reminds me of like maybe the guerrilla warfare of the Communist Party during whatever time.
Yeah,
And
but I
yeah,
think the ideals are a little bit different because Cooney is way more embracing of the past
right,
and like
no, yeah,
way more flexible than Mao ever was. I think because Mao
there,
was the one who like was like burn all the books, like kill all the intellectuals, right? Like, yeah, Cooney is definitely not the same as that.
so in a sense he's also kind of like the first emperor too, right?
Kind of, yeah, because Cooney was like, looking back, I appreciate some of the things the old emperor was doing,
Right,
like encouraging commerce, free flow of culture and ideas,
yeah,
roads, right, connecting all the kingdoms.
yeah, agreed.
So yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
like I said, there's a little bit of history and a lot of folklore. But you know what, Jason? Question for you: what is the difference between West versus East in terms of like fantasy?
so okay, so to be honest, I haven't really read that much of like Eastern like wuxia
Yeah.
stuff, but honestly, I don't think the difference is that big. The
Okay.
only the only the only reason I bring up the difference in style of storytelling for Grace of Kings is this is definitely influenced by history books, I think,
Hmm.
because like from what I know, all those old wuxia books. Like there's some translations I've read, like maybe a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like they hit a lot of the same beats as like Western stuff I've read. The only difference is like there's like a whole emphasis on like cultivating your energy in the Eastern side, which is like magic in the Western side.
Okay.
Like cultivation, that whole like martial arts thing.
Like chi.
Kind of, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on it, so please like educate us if you know more about this. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just like people like to pick out differences, but I think I see more similarities
Okay. If
from in my experience.
so, I guess you were mentioning like a similarity would be the chi and the magic, right?
Yeah, basically some mystical energy that lets you do extraordinary things. Like, come on, just different names
Yeah,
for like the same stuff.
I gotcha. So, what are some of the themes that stood out to you in terms of the book?
I want to mention the prose in the book, like the way it's written.
Okay.
I can see why people think it might be a little bit too flowery, but I really enjoyed it.
In
Like there
wait,
were a lot of
yeah, go for it.
like there were a lot of lines that stood out to me, like little hints of wisdom, like quotes
Yeah,
from random characters. Like I was like, yeah, this is very well written. Like say what you want about the story, but Ken Liu knows how to write.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Um,
Themes. Do you want to say anything else on the way it's written?
the way it's written, I will say this, and I kind of mentioned to you early on that I felt like the tone shifted often, especially when he goes to each individual character. It seems like the
Yeah.
book with each character had a different tone, especially with Kunigaru, because a lot of the other characters are more serious, except for Kuni and his wife Jia, right?
Yeah.
And throughout that, like, so for me, it was kind of abrupt where it would be like, oh, there's a serious moment with Mata, and then all of a sudden Kuni's back and he's like, hey, what's up, everybody? So for me, it was kind of like, wow, this is really weird. But it coalesces at the end because when you get into these battle scenes, it has to be serious. There's no way to like fool around during a fight sequence.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Um,
course.
yeah, and then yeah, no, you go. Theme
Yeah.
wise.
Theme. So we already mentioned past versus future, right?
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned stuff you didn't agree with.
Hmm.
I can probably guess what those were.
Oh yeah, it was okay. So it's pretty much at one point, everyone starts having affairs with with their spouses, right?
Right.
Um, so Cooney, well, no, Jaws starts having an affair with her what is that? Her bodyguard, pretty much, her servant,
Yeah. Bodyguard, caretaker, guardian.
caretaker. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just protect her. And then Ja, I think he has sex with like 8 different women or something in that harem after he takes over the empire. And so pretty much like Ja, her first thought is to, we're not always together, so I understand. I'm stuck on this island, and then you're stuck on that island because Mata is mad at us, so he won't let us near each other, right? So you know
Yeah.
what? I think the best thing to do is while we're apart, we should have different lovers. You should definitely marry another lady. You should have many wives if that's what's required. It's
Well,
something like that.
wasn't that because she knew that he had an appearance to keep up? He
Yes,
had to he had to look like he had given up and he was satisfied with what he got, right?
right. When he's
And
stuck
that's
on that particular island, yeah.
yeah, so I think that was a primary driver of Jia saying you need to marry someone. I know it hurts for me, but like if we want to make this work, like this it has to be done.
Yeah,
And
100%.
Cooney's probably like, hee hee, like I can go do it now.
Yeah.
Inside, like, oh, if you say so, you know.
Yeah. So my wife is watching this TV drama about ancient Chinese emperor, and he's got like 50 wives because, he has to have a son. And then
Yeah.
he has nothing better to do with his life than have 50 wives and to legislate or whatever. So I'm like, there's no way this is ever gonna be okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my thought is just don't have more wives. One is enough. like it so no, like the idea is like to me it's a test, right? So you know my story where it was like um this is not about me having multiple wives, but like I had an ex-girlfriend and she was like, I don't celebrate Valentine's Day. So I didn't care, right? I was like, okay, if you don't celebrate Valentine's Day, then we don't have to do anything. But it was a test. You see what I'm saying? So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Cooney, you are an idiot. How could you not see past this? But
Was it? I thought she was. I thought Jiao was
no,
serious.
no, she was serious. But like at the end of the day, like throughout the
Yeah.
book, you start to realize that there's a fracture, and it's causing
Yeah.
more problems. It'll cause problems in the future.
Yeah. And she even realized, or who said this? Was it his new wife that said, "Hey, like by marrying me and having a kid with me, this is going to be an issue further down."
No, I think
Once,
this is the aunt of Mata Soto Zindu. Remember?
oh, okay, yeah.
I think she told Ja, you need to be careful. Yeah, something like that.
Well, wasn't she also the one who was telling Jia like, "Oh, it's okay to have multiple partners"?
Was she?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think.
then
Yeah, I remember that. So it has to be someone else.
okay, okay.
It's either
I,
Jia or Risana, like his new wife.
oh, her name is Rosanna. I thought it was Risotto. And I might
Did
be
you already have?
getting hungry, but yeah, I
So what
think
did you
that
think
was.
of that
I think,
whole?
huh?
What did you think of that part?
What?
Having it's okay to have multiple spouses.
No, it's a trap. That's not right, dude. That's not right. It already
Yeah,
takes, it takes it. Okay, relationships are tough, right? It's not always hunky dory. So it takes work. And if you're just like, oh, you should have another one, that's gonna be more work. It's more money, you know?
yeah. Well, I don't think he's concerned about money, but it's definitely gonna be
Yeah,
more work.
yeah, 100%.
But devil's advocate, if you think about all of that, all that stuff back in the day,
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense because having an heir,
Yes.
having multiple heirs.
Mm-hmm.
Remember in Jade War,
Yeah.
that was a big issue as well.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
stone eye.
yeah, you kind of have to cover your bases. So we don't agree with it with our 21st century lens, but back in the day, in this context, it probably makes a lot more sense than it does now.
Yeah, and going back to that TV show, yeah, that king has multiple wives, multiple sons, and some of them start dying because of disease. So you're absolutely
Yeah,
right. But
and let's be real. When you're a king, you don't
yeah,
have to do as much work to keep them happy because we're
but
not
that
kings right now. So we're we gotta do work,
yeah,
work on yourself, right?
yeah. But the
Yourself as close to the king as possible.
but the thing with Kunigaru is, they make it a point throughout the book saying that he legislates. He's there. He's learning every aspect of the governance. So
Yeah.
so when do you have time for poontang? That's that's kind of the question.
I guess on Sunday.
Yeah, but what I will say about this book, and this is what lifts it up to a 3.5, but doesn't get it to 4, right? Is that I really sympathize a lot more with a lot of the side characters, and I sympathize with Mata, especially when he's very vulnerable in certain scenes. And I really think that the action and the choreography, they are very well written. Like the battle. Remember that one battle when most of the army has fled, but Mata's like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna take this whole area." Right? I
Yep.
don't remember all the names of the countries. There's like 6 different islands or whatever, and he
Yeah.
just races down a hill with like 500 people, and he takes back all the territory because he's like hacking everyone to death with his 2 trusty blades. One, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Don't you like how he found like a perfectly sized horse for himself?
Yes.
I'm like, this is way too convenient. But hey, I mean, it's kind of like Romance of the Three Kingdoms, where like you got to have your sword, your
Yeah.
horse, and like you got to have this and that. Like everything, yeah, it just happens for a reason.
Yeah, it's divine intervention, man.
Yeah.
He's pretty much Achilles.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Aren't they saying
Kunigaru,
he's like 8 feet tall, like 300 pounds?
yeah, and he's got double pupils. Like, what is double pupils?
Yeah, I can't really picture that. Like he
And then
has
it's
two.
really crazy. Yeah, wobbly eyes, right?
No, like he has two dots in his eyes,
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So they make it a
like
huge
irises.
point. Yeah, no, the black part, the black part.
Oh, so where's the other one? Is it like it's like a figure eight
No,
where
no, no.
they're next?
So I think like one of them is moving constantly, looking around, and the other one is just straight.
No way, they're not
Yeah.
like looking in different directions. You look dumb. You look dumb as shit. Why do you do that? No, I think they're either next to each other or like on top of each other. So
Oh
it's like
yeah, yeah.
so it's gonna look like a sideways figure eight or like a upright figure eight.
I really like my idea though.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would have taken him seriously if he was like
But
that.
here's the thing, because they make a really big thing about that, right? Because they're always constantly saying Kunigaru is the only guy who could look at his pupils without not knowing where to look. You
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
that?
No, because
So
people know like it's rare and holy shit it's like scary.
yeah,
And
but
Cooney was the only one who could treat him like a normal person.
exactly. And I think that aspect of Cooney is great. Like the way he looks at people, how we're all on a even playing field, right? Because he comes from a family that they're not well off, but they're not poor. But, he was still kind of like he was always sort of humble, right?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, I would say he was more poor. Remember in the beginning he would stay over at a friend's place until they kicked him out and he would like move on to the next friend
well,
and
that's
just
because
rinse
his
and repeat.
parents kicked him out.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah, that's true. You know what I thought was funny though? Anyone that goes into power or gets power too early, they always become crazy, right? So the
Oh
pe-
yeah.
so the people who became like who started the whole rebellion in the first place, they became exactly like what you would imagine, like a power hungry asshole.
Yeah, remember the one of the two guys who cut
Yeah,
open the fish?
yeah,
He just started building like a huge city and he just went crazy. He's like screaming at people to like build faster, or do this, do that.
yeah, and
Basically
and
like a
that's
totally different person.
that's because he came from nothing, and all of a sudden he got all this power. So
Yeah.
he had no middle ground. You know what I mean?
Oh, one thing that you mentioned early on was I remember you told me I don't get why people started revolution just because they found something inside of a fish.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So do you remember that scene? Like, can you tell us like what you remember from that scene?
Okay, so pretty much, I don't remember it that well, but like, were they fishing? Because they cut open the fish and there's a paper inside, and the
Yeah,
paper and the paper pretty much said that guy, I think I don't remember his name, but he was one of the guys that were going to help build a memorial to the dead emperor, pretty much.
yeah, yep.
And he was like, "Whoa, this thing says I'm gonna be king." So he's like, "All right, let's just start a rebellion." And I was like, "What?"
I think that was like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Because
Right.
if you think about one of the scenes, well, I think shortly after the gods are like looking down on it,
Yeah.
and one of them saying to the other one, like, "Oh, nice trick with the fish. Like, did you mean for that to happen?" And of course, the gods are like, "No, of course not. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Oh, one thing to mention is apparently the gods are forbidden to directly interfere
Yeah.
with the affairs of men. So like they have to find really roundabout ways to
Yeah.
do so. Which I'm like, this is pretty direct, but whatever.
It's still tricky. Like the gods know each other's character, right? So whenever something tricky happens, they always look at one god, right? And each god has their favorite. So if something happens to Mata that was good, they're always like, "Well, you helped them out," and they're always like, "No, we didn't." Yeah.
Yeah, we're
So
like, yeah, wind blows in strange directions, of course.
yeah, and I really
I
think,
also,
huh?
oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, I
No,
was
I
just
was
gonna
just
say,
gonna say like the mythology, like that's
yeah,
cool that you're creating a mythology behind it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was actually gonna say, like, I liked how those sisters, remember those the twin
Twins.
goddesses?
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of went on different sides, right?
Yeah.
And they were like kind of sad about it, but also kind of bitter.
But that's the other thing, because there's siblings throughout this whole book, right? Like two
Yeah,
brothers. They started out on the same road, and then one of them became an idealist, the other one became a Kunigaru enthusiast, right?
yeah,
And at the end of the day, Kunigaru wins. And but the other brother, because he respects Mata so much, you mentioned this. Everyone at the end of the book that was on Mata's side, they committed suicide pretty much, like
yeah,
warriors at least.
yeah,
And Mata also commits suicide, which I thought was really interesting because he's like, well, I'm never gonna fight anyone as good as Mara, and I'm and or Mora or whatever his name is, and like I've done so much to Kuni that I'd rather die this way. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought, like, honestly, that was probably the only way he could have died.
Yeah, he wants to die in battle, but there's no one good enough to fight him anymore. You know?
Yeah, he already killed the one guy who could probably kill him. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
then the other interesting thing is all the gods have their own spirit animal.
Oh yeah, yeah, they
I thought
do.
that was I thought that was cool too. Like what is that? The falcon? Like what?
Yeah. What was? Do you remember that scene where? Oh, okay. Remember that princess on the island? That
Yes,
really sad story where
the
she
beautiful
basically.
one, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that was like. I don't know. I'm still kind of thinking about that, but that was an interesting character, an interesting situation. She's basically so beautiful that like that's her only. People only acknowledge that about her, and she's
yeah,
like, she doesn't like that.
yeah.
But in the end, like she has to use it to like sabotage the alliance,
Right,
right?
and
Remember that? And then she basically sacrificed her reputation. Is that what you call it?
yeah. So
She
basically,
basically like branded herself a traitor in order to save her country.
exactly. So no one really knows the truth except for like people that all died, like the people that died.
Yeah, so she was the favorite of one of the goddesses.
Yeah,
I don't remember the name, but basically after that incident, after she sacrificed herself, no, I think no more of those falcons would ever visit that island again, right? But then isn't the falcons the
the main.
other
Yeah, it's a different god.
Mata's favored one?
Yeah, I think so, dude. I honestly, there's so much going on in this book, guys. It's 600 like 13 pages, 15 pages. Okay, the
But
next book is
yeah.
850 pages. Okay,
Oh wow, I
yeah,
was gonna say Jade Legacy was longer than this book, but this book, Grace of Kings, feels longer because Jade Legacy focuses on like
it's
it's still a pretty big world, but this is like huge, like
yeah, yeah, and it's got over 20 characters that are constantly coming back and forth. They just come back in and they leave and they come back in, and you're like, oh my god. And there's so many islands. I can't see. This is a novice reader. Like I can't keep track of everything, and I think that's the big problem when it comes to me in fantasy. So I need to train myself into understanding. Because the other thing is, sorry, we're going a little long. We're not going to do casting on this book. But the other thing is, when someone becomes an emperor or someone gets a title, they change their name.
yeah. What is Cooney's new name?
Dude, I don't remember. It's like it starts with the R. I think
Yeah,
so.
I guess we'll
But
find out in the next book.
yeah, I've already started it and I forgot his name already. So, but I will say the second book starts really interesting, and that's actually the next book we're reading anyways, because we're going through the whole series, and hopefully by June we'll have finished every book leading up to the fourth book's release, which is June 21st.
Yeah, I hope we
So,
don't get burned out.
oh, dude, I'm already. So I already told Jason, you gotta pick a shorter book next go. And then
Didn't I
so
already,
he,
didn't I
huh?
already pick another the new book?
Yeah, he
That
did, and I was like, bro, 649 pages is not short.
but it's a one
But
off.
yeah, it's shorter than the rest of them. But like we're gonna pace ourselves. What we're trying to do is one book a month. But okay, Jason, before we end today, anything else you want to bring up in terms of this particular book?
We covered a lot. I think I've gotten out most of what I wanted to say.
Uh huh.
Um, no, I think that's about it. Like there's definitely a lot of stuff to the book. This is
Yeah.
my second time around, and there's still some stuff that I'm sure I missed.
Yeah.
Hey, like there's only so much time in the world, and I'm not getting any younger, so
Yeah.
gotta keep on charging ahead with new books.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it, but it is to me it's a difficult read. It was kind of difficult, especially the names, man. I gotta tell you.
More difficult than Jade City.
Okay, so here's the thing between this and Jade City. Jade City is kind of a genre that I'm in tune with because you know me and gangsters, right? Like
Yeah,
I enjoy reading gangster fiction, gangster movies, and I've always been interested in the triad. So already, there's an interest in that. Whereas this, it's kind of like kingdom building, and there's politics in it.
yeah.
There,
There's a lot of like taxes and administration, and yeah,
you know,
definitely not that sexy.
I'm really glad you brought that up because because there's okay. So remember when the old emperor dies and the son gets brought up, right?
Yeah,
So he one of his advisors chooses the new leader of their army, and he just chooses the tax guy because he's
yeah,
annoyed by him, right?
right.
And then all of a sudden this tax guy is able to like bring the
He's like
army,
really good.
and yeah, and he cleans out the army and makes sure all the funds are going to the right area, and then like he rebuilds the air force pretty much.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then the gods were like, "That's a interesting choice of a general you got there."
yeah.
Yeah, so like they're behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Yeah, agreed. And we didn't mention it, but like Dandelion, so it's called the Dandelion Dynasty, right? But throughout the book, it's a battle against the dandelion and the chrysanthemum flower, right? Because Kunigaru is dandelion and Mata is chrysanthemum. And
Yep.
and there's this really beautiful section of the book where it's talking about the differences, right? They're doing that drinking game. Remember that drinking game?
Oh yeah, yeah. Say like, isn't it like say what you are like?
Yes. Like and
Compare yourself to something.
yeah, and then if they believe in you, everyone else drinks, and if they don't believe you, you have to drink, right?
Yeah,
And I thought it was just beautiful how they go on about like the virtues of this flower and the virtues of this flower. Normally, as a guy, I'd be like, who cares? It's a flower. But like
yeah,
they kind of go into the virtues of each flower, like the dandelion, like the buds will flow in the wind, and wherever it lands, another one will grow. It's kind of
yeah,
it's a weed pretty much, but it's a beautiful weed and whatever. And I don't remember it, but like the whole thing, like the language, I think is so well done, which goes back to what you said. Like this guy Ken Liu can write, you know.
yeah, yeah. Definitely.
So and yeah, I just there are moments of humor throughout this book that I really enjoyed. but sometimes like, and this is why it's 3.5 and not a 4. But like to me, the tonal shift sometimes happens too abruptly, and that's just for me.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, the main reason why I didn't rate this book higher is like the character work. Like
yeah,
I think we were spoiled by the Greenbone saga. Like the
yeah,
character work there is like top notch. Like I think you were probably spoiled too, but
yeah,
yeah, that was the main reason why this wasn't a higher score.
yeah, I agree. And that was a good discussion.
Yeah, sorry, there's a little something going on, but yeah. So we will charge full steam ahead on the next book, and we are looking forward to discussing that with everyone here.
Hey, what's that book called? Because it's like freaking long. Okay,
It's called the
everyone.
Wall of Storms.
What is it?
The Wall of Storms.
Okay, okay. So everyone, it's 850 pages or so. It's something crazy. So if you haven't got it, you should get it. And if you're not gonna read it, then just listen to the spoiler review next go around.
All right, thanks everyone.
Yep. All right. Thanks,
Yep.
guys, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.